my talk is about blocks within blocks, within blocks, within blocks, and so forth. Basically the framework of how kind of WordPress block-based structures and layouts are. So I decided to call it Blockception and found a picture and yeah, use my graphical skills, as Kristen will attest to, not the best. So yeah, my name's Simon. Yeah, as Michael said, I've had 18 years experience with WordPress, started in Bristol back 18 years ago for a company called Deckchair back in the day. And then yeah, we're on the meetup, was speakers manager for WordCamp Bristol in 2018. I used to hate Gutenberg. I had a very passionate discussion with one of the original creators of it back in the day, and I like cats, as you may note. Cool. Okay, so blocks. I might read out this lovely wordy quote. A WordPress block is a foundational modular component used to build and arrange content in the WordPress block editor, Gutenberg, which is very reading. Basically, it's a structural tool, so all your elements are blocks. So your kind of bits of code are filmed within blocks, and you can drop blocks in and out and around. They are used for managing paragraphs, images, buttons, widgets, etc. Your pages and posts, custom post types, are all made up of blocks. You'll see my first cat of many. So on this particular example, it's nice and simple. That's a block, that top element there, that orange kind of top banner. And underneath, another block, simple. Yeah, nice and simple. But if we break down the block, the one at the bottom, we'll find that this particular block here contains, there's another block within that one. And that one, that's also a block, that little element there. That's a block, and that's a block, and that's a block, which is simple, obviously. So when managing all these kind of blocks, they are kind of laid out like so. So this is going straight into the WP editor and loading up the block list, which is this little kind of 3- button. And you can see here with that particular example, there was the big numbered card grid block, which is the one surrounding everything. Within that was a card number component. Within that was a paragraph, a heading, another paragraph, and a button. All of these, so every single thing listed there is a block, and WordPress terminology calls it a block, which is somewhat confusing. But that's how you can kind of structure everything, and you can put blocks into your page. So as you can see here, everything there is a block. The thing with blocks is the way that they enable what we call direct editing or inline editing, so you can actually type visually on screen straight into that block. So here in the editor, I can click straight onto the paragraph and start typing straight into that. I don't go off to another field. I don't have to type it anywhere else. It also, within reason, visually looks similar to how it'll be on the front end. So if I've got this card grid of 4 things, I can edit something and it will stay in that position, and I can type in it in the position it's in. So yeah, inline editing, depending on how skilled your kind of developers and CSS developers, I'm looking at Kristen here because she had to do a lot of this for me. Your admin view, so this is the admin view, you can make it look very similar to the front end view, and you're editing in line, so you're typing into these elements to make changes as needs be. You don't have to go off and load a repeater field or something similar for that. There are many ways you can kind of build blocks. What I'm looking into this particular example is using ACF. I'm not affiliated with ACF, I just like it. It's just an easy way, and a lot of people have used ACF for building kind of template structures. So you'll have built like rows of text and repeaters and everything. And it's a gentler step to kind of move you into a block-based design. You don't have to touch a single line of React, and you can stick with your PHP, CSS, whatever way you prefer to build stuff. And that's why I like it. ACF blocks are customizable, dynamic, and integrate deeply with custom fields, which is another benefit. So you can apply custom fields to the blocks to add in settings. Say maybe like you've got a background color or a setting or a spacing setting, which is not a content, it's an actual setting. You can use ACF fields against it, the same as you used ACF fields on your custom post types. And it allows you to kind of, build your blocks without JavaScript or React knowledge, which is, for me, was the kind of a step to kind of try using blocks, but not having to learn React, especially with a development team. At the time behind me, I didn't want to say to several developers, right, you've all got to learn React now. So this let us kind of take a little small step between standard ACF template and block. It kind of sits in the middle ground. I'm not saying to not look into the React, it just kind of gives you an example of how you can go into it to kind of test it out first. So I'm now going to go in a little bit codey, hopefully not too codey, but I've got to go a little bit because otherwise I can't explain how any of this works. So the first thing you do is register a block. All of these slides I'll share, and I'll share the links. And I've done very basic examples because if I start doing full-on examples, it gets too complex. But there's a function, it's a WordPress function, you register a block, you pass through an array of arguments to tell it what that block is, what its name is, and so forth, and it's a function, and you just pop that into your theme. And then the key thing within those blocks, and the way I structure it is I have a folder of blocks, and in that I have a folder per block. Each block has a JSON file, it's called block.json, and that's basically just a definition file. This is the same for the React-based blocks as it is for the ACF ones. It uses the same file. There are just a few alterations, but the core stuff is the same. So if you start using these, you've already made one subtle step into building React blocks without realizing. And all this does is lets you define the name. So the name with these I've got is ACF/image text in this particular example. That can be whatever you want. They're ACF prefixed because they're ACF blocks in this particular. You give it a title, a description. You can categorize as well. You can create, WordPress comes with a certain amount of categories for blocks, but you can create your own categories, make it easier to find them. You can then provide an icon, which is either a WordPress icon, which I've completely forgotten the name of the library of those, the ones that you'll have used. Dash icon, thank you, Kristen. So your dash icons that you would have used for your custom post type icons or anything like that, you can use the same icons for your blocks. Or you can paste in an SVG, so the raw code version of the SVG can be pasted into there and you can have an SVG icon. You can also add keywords, so to help find the block. So if you have words which don't necessarily tie in with the title, you can have it searched that way. The title and the description are key for when you kind of hover over the block because that's what pops up, so make that nice and descriptive. So whether you've called it something really techy in the back end, it's only the title and the description, which is what the actual front-end user will see. The key bit, which I'm going to go into next, is these bits here, which are highlighted in green, which you can't really see on this screen. But the ACF parameters are only for ACF blocks. And with that, mode is either preview or edit, which basically means you either see it in the preview mode, which is what I showed you before, where everything is ready to just how it looks, or you can go into the edit, which turns it into the old school ACF field view. And then you tell it what file you want to render the template with. So I'm using PHP, and I cunningly call my template template.php. That sits in the same block folder as this block.json file does. The structure itself of the PHP template, you can use your ACF fields. So if you've applied a field against the block, you can load it in here. And you can register your field against a block. So there's different ways how you do your fields, how you register them. So in the menu way, when you register your block, you can say basically if the field is a block as equal to, and if you've registered your block with that function I mentioned before, your block list will appear here. So you can assign your ACF fields to a block, and you can use them as you want. So that can be anything that's non-kind of structured content, something that's a bit more awkward. Maybe a background image is a good one for a block, so something that you can't just edit almost in line. I've done spacing before, so like padding for a block above and below. You can add kind of settings like that, whatever you want, but ACF is kind of baked in, and you can use that. You could build the entire block using ACF fields if you wanted and not touch a single other element. And it just means you get a block version of an ACF template in a sense. You still have all the usability of a block, and you can drag it around the screen and do what you want, but that's not what this talk is about, because I said it was about inception and blocks and blocks. So here is the key step and why I kind of took on the ACF side of things, because ACF supports inner blocks, which is core part of WordPress blocks. So WordPress React blocks have inner blocks as well. Inner blocks allow you to nest content within your custom block, which allows you to do, like I said, the inline editing. So within a containing block, I can nest a paragraph, a heading, and any other kind of key blocks that I want from WordPress, and I can edit them in there. Within this, so the inner blocks section itself, so that's basically where it will get output. So you can wrap that in whichever code you want. So you can put some containing divs around it, you can put columns around it, you can do whatever you like. And then the last little bit is almost like the echo out bit of the blocks themselves. It takes two key attributes: allow blocks, which is where you can specify what blocks you're allowed to put within it, and templates, which is actually where you can define a pre-generated selection of blocks that get inserted as part of it. So you can drop your containing block and have a heading, a paragraph, and a button already inserted for you when the editor pops it in. So it's simple for them to then just kind of do it in. Same as you would with a template if you had those elements. The allow blocks is basically an array that you pass through. So I pull it out as a separate parameter just to keep it clear, and then I pass that parameter through. And that basically lets you define what blocks you want to use within it. What you don't want to do is allow every block to be used within it, because then you do get inception, and then you'll get blocks within blocks within blocks, which gets a little bit too confusing, and you get kind of like the mirrored effect, and you want to kind of restrict it. So for this particular example, I've got heading, paragraph, and list, and you'll see the name spacing is key here. So for all the core blocks, they're prefixed core, and you can find these if you look on WordPress. They are hidden away. WordPress documentation isn't great for finding these things, but there are a list of these, and you will learn where they are. Most of them are kind of obvious, so core heading, core paragraph, core list, core embed, core HTML. And then the ACF button at the bottom is one that I've made myself, which is for a call to action button, which is obviously familiar for Kristen, because that's what we've worked on together. That will mean that basically I can only insert those 4 blocks within my block. I can't add anything else within that. I can only do those. So it keeps it nice and contained. If you're building for a client, the client can't go wild and drop something else that they shouldn't be, drop a video into something where they shouldn't, for example. The template is the key bit for me in terms of building this for, say, a client and giving them some kind of structured content. So where you would originally, say, have templates or template parts in ACF, you can use your block to do the same, and you can put a template within your block. So this particular template inserts a heading and a button, and it's all based through array kind of conditionals. And this particular one, so the heading, you can put placeholder text. Level just means whether it's H1, H2, H3, and then you can apply an additional class name to it as well if you want to add some extra CSS. If a user deletes that heading, that class name will go. But depending on kind of how editable your client is, you can lock things as well, which I'll come to. And then the last one, yeah, just put in a button. So that will literally output a heading and a button when you insert the containing block onto your page. So as you can see here, you contain a block, and then basically this gets output. So there's my heading, and there's my button inserted over there. And then when I go to add additional blocks, which is my one gripe with Gutenberg, is adding blocks to the page is fiddly, and if anyone's got any ideas or solutions to that, I'm very open-eared, because the little plus button appears there, appears there, appears there. It doesn't ever seem to appear in the same place, and it's quite tricky. That's why the drop-down menu that appears on the left is quite handy to kind of do that. But that's something, that's my one and only real gripe with that, is it's quite fiddly. But when you do open, so the little plus button here, when you do open the box, you can see I'm limited. I can only insert headings in a paragraph. I can't do anything else. If I click Browse All, it opens up the entire block list on the left-hand side, and it won't let me insert something I shouldn't do within it. So now you can go one step further and add your own block within the block, and allow blocks within that. Blockception. So this is a particular example where I've got a block, and then another block, and then a block kind of within that. So this particular one is for a block we call tab content, so a row of tabs, and then each one displays a different panel underneath showing different content. So within that, I've got a tab. So there's a tab content block around the whole thing. The tab content block allows tabbed content tabs. That's all it allows. So you can add those in, as many or a few as you want. And what I like with blocks, kind of going back to like the repeater field, is you can drag them and drop them around, so you can move the order they appear very easily. But it's all visual because it's just in the side. Within a tabbed content block, you can then add in different things. So in this particular example, I have another custom block called text and image. That itself contains 2 additional blocks within it, which are the content blocks. One allows text, one allows image. The text one allows the paragraph and a button, and then the image one only allows an image to go in. That allows programmatically for me to wrap those content boxes in divs, so I can put them in columns or move them around as I want to. It gives me control to kind of insert the content, but also kind of contain what's going in and where it goes. So complex nesting provides maximum design flexibility for context editors. There you go. You can also restrict what blocks can do. So by default, when you load one of these in, the inner blocks that go within you can move around. And in the case of the tabbed content one, I want to be able to move those tabs around. I don't want them to change. But I might want a fixed structure, maybe for a block. So I've got a heading, a paragraph, a button. I want that locked in. I don't want them to delete that. You can lock the entire block so that you can't do anything with it, or you can go in per block, and you can do that in the template. You can actually lock a specific block so that the user can't remove it. So either remove it or delete it. Or you can restrict the whole lot. So you've got context only, prevents all operations. Blocks without content are hidden from list view. Children cannot override this lock. It's all very textual, isn't it? All is a strict lockdown. You can't do anything, can't insert, can't remove. And then insert won't let you add anything or remove anything. So that can be used. You can get around that. As an admin, you can go in and unlock things. And there are ways to prevent that. So if you've got a client who's a little bit trigger happy and delves behind the scenes and starts turning things off, you can actually prevent them from having the unlock ability. Again, it depends kind of who you're working with on that. But it is good because, if you want more of a fixed layout, it kind of lets you kind of control it so you're not letting them have complete free go on what everything happens. So here you go, so granular control. So I'm now applying this particular lock attributes back into my template where I specified that I wanted a paragraph into my template. And there's an additional attribute called lock. And there, with those 3 words I mentioned before, I've got remove set to true. So you basically, it's a confusing reverse logic. So this enables a lock preventing the removal of a specific block. So it basically means removal true means you can't remove it, which is very confusing but standard WordPress because why make it obvious? So that means I cannot remove it, which is obvious, right? But once you've done it a few times, you'll understand which way around. And if it's doing the wrong thing, set it to false or set it to true. Play and learn. And as I mentioned, because we're using ACF, and you can do this for standard blocks as well anyway, but it's already built into ACF. You're already using ACF. So you can apply your ACF fields to a block. So where all of this is kind of managed in the block itself, if you go to like the edit view, which loads up your kind of column on the right, or you go to the edit view in line, you get your kind of additional settings. So this is my right-hand column for a block, which is loading up on the right here. So when I'm editing the block here, my right-hand column view has the edit settings. And in this particular one, which is for the car grid one, is we can choose how many columns we want to display. So if I want 4 columns of these sort of small cars, or I can have 2 or 3, that's all done as ACF, and then I use my ACF logic within the block itself to apply all that however you want to do it. I'm not going to go into that because there's different ways to do that, but you can apply different things. You can also do spacing as well, so that in this particular example, that ACF field added a extra CSS class to the block, and then that meant that it was more padding spaced around the block itself. If this all sounds very complex and you need a hand, come and chat to me. I've just started working at Soto, and we're happy to kind of chat about anything web-based, happy to collaborate with anything. Maybe you've taken a project on, you want some assistance. Maybe you're a designer, you want a back-end, or maybe you can assist me. Maybe you are a back-end developer, a front-end developer, and you think, I could maybe assist you in doing stuff. Come and have a chat. I'm very welcome to talk about it, or we can talk about cats if you prefer, whatever you fancy. And there you have it, nested cats, blocks. A block within a block within a block. Blockception. And now I had to get one little sneaky thing in. So I did maybe sneak a little bit of AI in because I couldn't resist doing a terrible cat-generated picture, which I despise, but I had to do one for the irony of it. There's a lot to this. I've whistled through it because I could go in depth to every single element, and that would just take us off on a tangent. So that's why I've finished now, and opening the floor if there are any questions at all.